Advance voting in Battle River-Crowfoot has started, and Pierre Poilievre has his campaign boots back on.
Well, I'm loving the campaign. I'm having a lot of fun, actually. I love the people of Battle River-Crowfoot. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm meeting a lot of people who are very angry about the way that the federal government has abused and mistreated Alberta. And what they're saying is the era of pay up and shut up has got to come to an end. Alberta deserves a better deal within Canada.
Also marks 100 days since the federal election. And while only one party leader is looking for a seat, the Prime Minister is looking for a trade deal with the U.S.
We're not sacrificing any industry. We're working for the best deals for all our industries.
The NDP, meanwhile, prepares to select their new leader in the coming months. The party is facing a significant drop in their spending ability. This is a look at their fundraising over the last few elections. All right, let's chat about all of this with the Political Pulse panel. Greg McEachran is a former Liberal ministerial advisor. Fred Delory is a former Conservative campaign manager. And Mel Richer is a former communications director for the NDP. It's so nice to have you all here in studio. I want to start, Fred, with you. This podcast that Jenny Byrne sat down, spoke with our friends Rachel and Amanda for an hour. Super interesting. Would recommend it. It's a super interesting listen if you are into Canadian politics. And if you're watching this program, you probably are into Canadian politics. Let's listen to a clip from that podcast.
I think that Ottawa has just changed. There is a massive hiring in the public service. Mm-hmm. And I think Pierre being honest in terms of that there were going to have to be cuts made to the public service upset certain voters. I do wish that we had seen what was happening in Pierre's riding sooner than what we did. But that being said, I'm not sure what we could have done about it at the time, because it would have been so late that moving seats would have been strange.
So that, of course, is Jenny Byrne. She was sort of asked about what she thought about Pierre Poilievre ending up losing his riding. Fred, what do you make of what she had to say?
Oh, well, look, it was certainly interesting. The whole the line at the end about possibly moving seats. I never would have fathomed that possible. He had held that seat for 20 years. I don't think any people or anyone thought he was going to lose. The riding was redistributed. The riding was different. It grew a bit, but it grew into a more conservative rural area. So there's actually more conservative voters in this election than there was in the previous one, if you look back at past voting records. It was a bit strange. I think they're missing the big point, and I don't think they've done a real postmortem and understand why we lost this election. A lot of votes got driven to the Liberal Party from the NDP and the Bloc Québécois in Quebec in the many ridings, where there was this I don't know if it's the fear or uncertainty with Pierre Poilievre. And to say that it's because there's a lot of bureaucrats here, then there's more public service in the riding, that doesn't add up. It's not legitimate. And I think if that's what we think happened, we're missing what actually happened, and we're setting ourselves up for failure if we keep making these same mistakes.
Greg, one thing that Jenny Byrne was very clear on, she was asked whether she thinks that Pierre Poilievre will maintain the confidence of his party and remain on as party leader, and she gave a very clear yes. Do you think that, in this moment when we look ahead to that leadership review, that seems to be on track?
I mean, we'll see. I mean, everyone, there was no way that he was going to lose his own riding, and he lost his own riding. So I do think the amount of coverage on the by-election and why he chose such a super safe riding, he has said things been reported in local media in Alberta. I want to be Alberta's voice in Ottawa. Well, you had a hell of a lot of Conservative MPs over the last 20 years from Alberta. What were they doing? I don't think this by-election has actually been all that helpful for him. I mean, everyone is telling us that he's going to win, but I heard that before. That's going to be a big part of it. You can sometimes win an election like that, but you still, the 1,000 cuts have taken their toll. On the podcast, I disagree a little bit. I did not enjoy it.
I think it's super interesting. I found it fascinating to listen to, and the hour went by super fast.
I'm not particularly interested with this, or particularly familiar with this podcast. I think it would have been better had the Liberal and Conservative voice interviewed her. They are both former Conservative staffers. There's no pushback. There's a lot of things, like Fred just pointed out, that are there that are very odd. If you want a deep dive into the ice cream episode of Veep, this is the podcast for you. If not, I would skip along, perhaps 15 minutes in. But what I'm noticing is there's something for everyone. If you want Jenny Byrne to go, she says she's going. But if you want her to stay, she's staying on as an advisor. She even said about her own business, I walked away from my business. No, I didn't walk away from my business. I know what that's like, because she's probably thinking like, oh, my clients might not want to hear that. But I can also see where she is currently an advisor. She said something about Carney hasn't fixed the economy yet. Like, this is someone who worked for Stephen Harper in 2008 during the recession. Are you kidding me that you think he's going to fix the economy in 100 days? And the other thing I've noticed with the MP you had on last night, a lot of Conservatives, they are saying, Mark Carney said this, and no one is challenging those Conservatives on that. And if you actually look, he did not say those things. I think the technical term is butthurt. A lot of these Conservatives who are really super loyal to Poilievre are looking for a reason quickly to bring Carney down a couple of pegs. And I can see from this podcast that starts with Jenny Byrne.
Our interview yesterday with the Conservative critic, we wanted to learn more about, how this Conservative plan was going to be unveiled. And I had to ask 3 or 4 times to sort of, on this day when the party was making this announcement about something they wanted to put forward as an alternate vision for Canada on how things could be achieved, I couldn't get an answer out of her about how that would work. And we went around in a circle several times trying to sort of get to a specific answer on what does this look like? How would it work? What tell Canadians about it? I found that was a very challenging sort of moment there where I was just trying to figure out what it was.
Not insignificant that it's a Conservative member of Parliament on the CBC. So that has probably gone through some permission slips to get her here to that interview.
Mel, I want to bring into the conversation here. I want to talk about the NDP fundraising numbers. It is sort of a difficult moment. It's not new that it's a difficult moment. How much trouble and how hard is it going to be for the NDP to really dig out of this hole?
When I talk to folks who are at the party, obviously people are taking this stuff seriously and they're taking a close look at the numbers. But the situation we were in 2015 after Tom Mulcair's election was way worse, and we were able to get out of that one. So I have full confidence that the party will be able to do the same thing. The one thing that I noticed about the numbers, or that Q1 and Q2 are the same. So that to me is at least that base of folks that you were talking to are still there. So that's maybe good news coming out of that. Not obviously some good numbers when you compare to the past elections. This was also an election where, Katie, you may not know this, but I took a two-week leave and I joined the campaign in the last 2 weeks. And what I heard everywhere was this election's, too important. We're terrified about Poilievre, or we're terrified about Trump, and they're placing their votes either with Carney or with Poilievre to deal with that. And I think that's kind of the result that you see in the fundraising. I think that's the same thing that we heard from folks directly that resulted in that, where fundraising will go in the next few months with the party leadership, with the leadership contest. I think that will tell a different story. I think if we see, similar numbers or things that don't change, then maybe it's something to be a little bit more worried about. But for right now, I have full confidence that the folks who are at the party will be able to manage it and come out of it.
Fred, for as long as the NDP remains weak and has challenges when it comes to fundraising or figuring out its debt, what does that mean for the national picture in terms of who is drawing in that support?
Yeah, it's wide open right now in that regards of where the left is, the NDP struggling where they are. But that makes huge challenges for the Conservative Party, where we, in a two-party system, it's very hard for Conservatives to get elected at the federal level. We need a bit of a left-wing balance there, because the Liberals will eat that vote. So, if the NDP can get their act together and get a leader.
I'm just going to push back a little bit.
Please do. But you need a leader who pops, is what
Totally,
you're going to need
totally.
to be able to come through this.
100%.
If you don't get the right leader, then you are for years going to be in the
I'm
wilderness.
really hopeful that we're going to have somebody put their name forward who is somebody who can speak to, working people, who can speak to folks who are trying to get by and grow that NDP tent and tell people, if you want, life to be better for your kids, if you want life to be better for the people around you, we're the party for you. But I will push back. The Conservatives massively benefited from the NDP in this last election. They like to say that, because the NDP collapsed, we lost. They picked up most of our seats. So that actually categorically is false. And I wouldn't say, I do think we saw a lot of folks who were NDP voters or some folks who were NDP voters who went to the Conservatives. I'm thinking in particular in British Columbia. That's what we heard in focus groups out there. But there were also, the strategic voting cost both the Liberals and the NDP seats to the Conservatives. So to say that, what happened with the NDP was the reason why the Conservatives lost, no, the reason the Conservatives lost is because of the Conservatives. They actually benefited from a lot of those NDP seats, particularly in Ontario. So with the fact, that we heard Jenny Byrne say, oh, the reason we lost is Trump and the NDP, it's nothing to do with us, I think is you're not getting to the point of it.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I'm saying for the next election, we need a strong NDP.
I agree with you, Fred. We absolutely need a strong NDP, and I'm counting on that happening.
Me too.
I gotta ask you a question, and I'm afraid the question is going to sound flippant, and I don't mean it to sound flippant. This is the Pulse panel. I'm not trying to be flippant, but you say you have hope. What is giving you hope right now?
You know what? I've heard of a few folks who are considering it. Who
want to tell us?
I mean, I'll let them tell. I think that there's a process going on where you have to wait till your nomination's approved before you can announce. But there's some folks who have worked for a long time with working people, who have shown working people that you can be reasonable and still do really good things. And I think that gives me hope, and I hope that it's somebody who can build on what Jagmeeta's done to make people's lives better in a concrete, realistic way. A la John Horgan, a la Wab Kinew, and I'm hopeful that people who kind of breathe that kind of life in the party come and put their name forward, even though it's a tough time to put your name forward, but I have full confidence that it's going to be a good leadership race.
Greg, we're just over 100 days into the government of Mark Carney. What do you, in this moment, I'm going to ask you a twofold question. What do you see as sort of the biggest challenge that has been and that you are concerned about going forward? And where do you think that sort of something has surprised you that has actually gone, governing is hard, everyone knows that has gone maybe better than you expected?
The second question first. There's been a lot of focus on Trump and the White House, and even today on CNN, someone was referring to the meeting Trump had with the Ukraine president. I think we all kind of held our collective breath when Mark Carney went face to face with Donald Trump, and that went extremely well. I think, for the average Joe and Jean in Canada, that was a good moment. The thing that I would worry about is, I think at the top level, the big issues around trade, defense it's kind of Canada's new role, post-Trump. The announcement that the Prime Minister made today about increasing salaries for our military, great stuff. What I worry about is what one MP described to me as mid-level priorities. The stuff that we were obsessed with a few months ago, like housing, things like that. There was an awfully long time for the Carney government to staff up, and you had people in interim places. That hurt them. That continues to hurt them. I still, I'm hearing of offices that, are looking for help to staff up. They have a summer caucus coming up. I believe it's going to be in September out west. I don't know if that's public, and I don't know if I was allowed to say that yet. But that is going to be kind of a behind closed doors. Are we meeting the moment? What are we missing? So, if you're one of the big cabinet ministers and the prime minister's focused on you and you're working together, things are probably sailing along as good as they can. But those, mid-level priorities, they can't lose sight of those.
And Fred, when you hear that from Greg, does that sort of paint a picture where there could be sort of opportunities for Pierre Poilievre to raise concerns and really, have an impact if there are some challenges outside of the big picture issues?
Yeah, looking back at the last election, the Conservatives made some inroads into the GTA they weren't expecting, in the Peel region in particular. Crime is a hot issue there. And the Liberal crime record for the last 10 years is very questionable. I would say weak, but I won't get into a debate on that. That allowed room for the Conservatives to grow, and that room is still there, and they can continue to grow in different parts of the country. That and other issues, that's just one example. So if the Liberals do not focus, they have to focus on all those issues. They can't just look at certain things. They got to get tough on crime, and it's not just making random gun announcements every few months and thinking that brings down crime. It doesn't do it.
Okay, we have less than a minute left. I'm going to ask Greg, is that your big concern, that it's the big picture stuff, okay, that can be handled, but, the things that are not necessarily the top of people's minds every single day, that could really be the danger spot?
Absolutely. And, you've got some cabinet ministers who are not only new to cabinet, but new to politics. And so it's a huge learning curve. You're trying to get a hold of your files at the same time you're trying to find out where the coffee pot is. And if you don't have good, experienced staff around to help you with that, that can be extremely problematic. I've seen lots of so-called stars in politics fade pretty quickly.
All right. And perfect timing, because now the show is over. So we made it right to the end. We made it right to the end. Okay, thank you very much, Mal, Craig, and Fred. Thank you very much for joining us.